Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. and Western allies have sought ways to step up the pressure on Putin to end his war. Among those ways is sanctions and bans on Russian energy imports. Clay Lowery is an executive vice president at the Institute of International Finance and the former assistant secretary for international affairs at the Treasury Department. Clay, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
So the European Union is proposing a ban on all imports from Russia by the end of this year. What's the significance of that?
So it's significant largely in that Russia's exports are dominated by oil, natural gas, and other energy exports. So about over 50% of their exports are energy related, which translates for Russia into a huge percentage of their revenues, their fiscal revenues. So banning all of that, which the United States and Canada had already done, as well as the United Kingdom and others, is a fairly significant step because it's a big deal for Europe. One caveat, the European Union has basically proposed it. It has to pass through all of the countries in the European Union, and there are still a couple of countries that haven't said yes to this because they're so dependent on Russian gas and oil exports, excuse me.
You know, despite the sanctions, there's been a rise in energy prices all over the world.
Yes.
And my understanding is this has given Russia a $60 billion surplus. Yeah. So is this having the opposite effect? Is it, giving them a windfall?
So it's a great question. I think that it is getting them a little bit of a windfall. Now, remember, there's a couple things that to keep in mind. It is true prices are up, but of course volumes are down because they're not able to export as much. They're not exporting anything to the United States, basically, and to a lot of other countries. If this oil embargo goes into place, it will take a little bit of time. The Europeans have said they can't do it right away. That will take down, again, more of their exports. Obviously, price makes up for some of it, but there's a lot of other sanctions that are out there that are not just on the energy sector that are going to harm Russia's economy.
Speaking of which, a lot of analysts had said that the Russian economy would collapse. Yeah. It's not even close.
Right.
So what's going on? What's the long-term impact to the Russian economy?
So I think that the sanctions regime couldn't be expected to actually collapse everything right away. Instead, it would harm the financial markets, in particular the banking system. But over time, that will actually harm the economy. And so for instance, at where I work at the Institute of International Finance, we predict that basically the Russian economy will drop by about 15% this year. Now, some people are saying 10%. Either way, that's significant. So let me just put that into perspective. In the United States, during the financial crisis about a dozen years ago, our economy in 1 year, and remember how catastrophic it was, dropped by 2.5%. So Russia's economy, by these calculations, would be 4 to 6 times worse than that. It would basically take Russia back 15 years in terms of their economic growth. So that is a pretty significant impact. Now, is it going to happen right away? No. But you will start seeing it happening over this quarter that we're in, Q2, and over the remainder of the year.
I don't have to tell you that Americans are feeling the pain at the pump. Yeah. Is there a way to punish Putin without punishing ourselves?
My short answer is no. You can try to mitigate it, but we were already suffering from inflation before this war happened, including higher commodity prices. This has exacerbated the problem, and those prices have continued to go up. I think that there is going to be a little bit of economic pain because of that. Some of our economic pain has nothing to do with the Russia-Ukraine situation, but this clearly has hurt it. It's also hurt it in a different way, which is really not about commodity prices, which is just uncertainty in the markets and uncertainty in what's going on in the geopolitical situation. There's not much you can do about that outside of continuing to make progress on fighting against this aggression that the Russians have shown.
Looking ahead, hopefully to the end of this war, obviously Ukraine's going to need a lot of money to rebuild the country. Yeah. Is there a way for the Treasury Department to seize Russian assets, to use that to rebuild the country?
I think there's going to be a lot of lawyers looking at that really very carefully right now, both government lawyers and private sector lawyers. And the reason is because it kind of comes into basically, has there been some sort of a legal maneuver that you can take the assets? So you see that in criminal cases every now and then. But you're taking a sovereign's asset, so that's going to be a harder thing to do. it gets you towards something called expropriation, so you have to be really careful about that. And I think that the Treasury Department has said that they're looking into it, and there are others that are talking about it as well. But you want to be careful because it could lead towards lawsuits going forward. I think that helping the Ukrainians without doing that, you see that the Biden administration has put forward a major financial package to the Congress to see whether or not they can get foreign assistance for Ukraine. The European Union has said that they also are going to be doing that. Obviously, this is part of a rebuilding process for Ukraine, hopefully if the war ends soon. But those are going to be probably a little more significant. I think there's going to be a lot of legal analysis done before there's a freezing, not just freezing of assets, but taking of those assets.
What do we know about what China is likely to do? Do you think that they will sanction Russia? Will they stay neutral? Will they evade sanctions and support Russia? What do you think?
So China has walked a very careful line here. They have clearly not been overly supportive of the sanctions. At the same time, they have not been overly supportive of let's get around the sanctions. So they've kind of, like your line about being sort of neutral, maybe a little bit leaning some of the rhetoric towards Russia. But I think where the concern will be is if the EU takes offline the oil exports, will Russia be able to diversify those exports to China or to other countries? China being obviously the biggest one. We'll see on that. We're not sure. There have been Chinese companies who have actually followed sort of the same path as U.S. and European companies, which is basically pull out of Russia and not do as much. But I think that your question is an open question, which we don't have a solution to right now.
All right, Clay. Well, we'll watch that. And thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.